Welcome. Reading Goodnight Stories with Bored Grandma. Hello, grandchildren. Grandma here. Are you ready for bed? Do you have your teeth brushed? If so, then here we go. Tonight I'm going to read to you Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin. There once was a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. One day, it happened that he came to speak to the king, and to give himself importance, he said, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." The king didn't believe this, of course, but he had the girl brought to him. He led her to a room full of straw, gave her a wheel and spindle, and said, "Get to work. Spin this straw into gold by morning, or you shall die." Then he locked the door behind him. Poor girl sat down and bursted into tears. She had no way to spin straw into gold. How could she? Suddenly the door opened, and a little man came in. "Good evening, my pretty one," he said. "Why are you weeping?" The girl explained, and the dwarf said, "What will you give me if I do it for you?" "My scarf," said the girl. He took the scarf, sat before the wheel, and grind. 3 times did he grind, and the spindle was full. Then he put another thread in, and grind. The second was full. So he spun on until morning, when all the straw was spun, and all the spindles were full of gold. The king arrived at sunrise. He was astonished and delighted at the sight of all the gold, but it only made him greedy for more. He put the girl into a larger room full of straw, and ordered her to spin it all in one night or die. Once more the girl sat down to weep, and once more the door opened and the dwarf appeared. This time she offered him her ring if he would spin the straw into gold. The little man took the ring, began to turn the wheel, and by morning all the straw was turned into shining gold. The king was overjoyed, but he was still not satisfied. He put the girl into an even larger room full of straw and said, "Spin this into gold tonight and tomorrow. You shall be my wife." As soon as the girl was alone, the dwarf appeared for the 3rd time. "What will you give me if I spin all the straw for you?" he asked. "I have nothing more to give you," she told him. "Then promise, if you become queen, to give me your first child." Who knows how things may turn out between then and now, thought the girl, and she promised to do as he asked. At once, the little man sat down to spin the straw into gold. In the morning, when the king saw that his orders had been obeyed, he took the miller's daughter to be his queen. After a year had passed, a beautiful baby boy was born to the king and queen. The little man was forgotten, till one day he suddenly walked into the queen's chamber and said, "Give me what you promised me." The queen was frightened. She offered the dwarf all the riches of the kingdom if he would only let her keep the child. "No," he cried. "I want what you promised me." Then the queen began to weep so bitterly that the little man took pity on her and said, "I will give you 3 days. If in that time you can find out my name, you may keep the child." All night long the queen tried to recall every name she had ever heard, and sent a messenger to learn what names were usually given to people in that country. When, the next day, the dwarf came again, she began with Algernon, Balthazar, Caspar, and went on to all the other names she knew or had heard of. But always the dwarf said, "That is not my name." The third day the messenger came and said, "I have not been able to find a single new name, but as I came over the mountains, I saw a little hut in the woods, and near the hut burned a little fire, and around the fire danced a funny little man who hopped upon one leg and sang, 'Today I brew, tomorrow I bake, next day the queen's child I'll take. How glad I am that nobody knows my name is Rumpelstiltskin.' How happy the queen was at hearing this. And when the dwarf came again and said, 'Queen, have you guessed my name?' the queen said mischievously, 'Is it Ichabod?' 'No.' 'Is it Carl?' 'No.' 'Well then, can your name be Rumpelstiltskin?' At this the dwarf flew into a terrible rage. He jumped up and down and screamed, so angry was he. Then he turned and rushed from the room and was never seen again. The Ant and the Grasshopper. One frosty autumn day, an ant was busily storing away some kernel of wheat that he had gathered during the summer to tide him over the coming winter. A grasshopper, half dead from hunger, came limping by. When he saw what the ant was doing, he begged for a morsel from the ant's store to save his life. "What were you doing all summer while I was busy harvesting?" asked the ant. "Oh," replied the grasshopper, "I was not idle. I was singing lovely songs all day long." "Well," said the ant grimly, "since you sing all summer, it looks as though you will have to dance all winter." Then, as he was closing the door on the grasshopper's sad face, the ant remembered how much he had enjoyed the grasshopper singing all summer long, and he opened his door again. "You may come in and dine with me," he said, "but I hope you have learned your lesson. Always prepare today for tomorrow's needs." The Crow and the Pitcher. A crow, so thirsty that he could not even say "Caw, caw," came upon a pitcher which had once been full of water. But when he put his beak into the pitcher's mouth, he found that only a little bit of water was left at the bottom, and tried as he might, he could not reach far enough into the pitcher to reach the water. Just as he was about to give up, a thought came to him. He picked up a pebble and dropped it into the pitcher. Then he picked up another pebble and dropped that into the pitcher. One by one, he kept dropping pebbles into the pitcher until the water reached the brim. Then he perched himself upon the handle and drank until his thirst was quenched. "Where there's a will," he said to himself, "there's a way." The end. Now off to dreamland you go.